Hello and welcome along to another RTÉ Rugby podcast. Neil Treacy here with you as we look ahead to the final round of the Guinness Six Nations. I'm joined this week by former Ireland international Sean Cronin, as well as former Leinster, Connacht and Ulster lock Mick Kearney, still playing in the Energy All-Ireland League with Clontarf. Fellas, good morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Morning. Thanks a million for having me.
Morning, Neil.
Sean, we'll get straight into talking about the big game. Friday night in Donnybrook. The Ireland legends against England legends. You've been roped into it. The boots are coming back on. You're going out for one last go. How much are you looking forward to that one, or dreading it?
I think a bit more. No, look, it'll be great. I haven't seen a few or met a few of the lads in a good while, so it'll be good to get back out there. I haven't done much contact work or anything like that to get ready for it. So fitness levels are okay, but I'd say I'll probably be a bit fitter than some of the lads that'll be rocking up. So hopefully to survive.
I don't know how late all those teams are confirmed, and I'm sure there's a lot of last minute lads who are roped into these things. But is there anyone in particular that you've seen is going to be playing with England who you're going, I hope to God I don't find myself one-on-one with him at some stage?
Well, look, there's a few in the backs. I saw Tom Barndell is still playing, and Armitage, but there's an old mate of mine that I played with in Connacht, Robbie Morris, a tight head that I saw is down. So that'll be interesting to lock horns with him again. Great guy. And look, there's a few guys there. I wouldn't know many of the English guys personally on a personal level, but like I was saying, it'd be great to see some of the Irish lads again. Dev, Shawnee O'Brien, Fionn Carr, met Ronan O'Mahony yesterday in Limerick, so be great. Look, it'll be great experiences for a great cause. So we'll dreading it a small bit, but it's exciting at the same time.
Mickey's after listing out a few names there, and I'm reluctant to call them old lads because it's a sprightly enough team he's mentioning there.
Oh, big time. There's a few lads who aren't long out of the game at all. Like, I'd be avoiding Sean O'Brien during the warm up like the plague. No doubt he'll be collaring lads for tackle tech 10 minutes before kickoff. So I don't know if we'll get massive numbers for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be good to see it. Well, look, for whoever is ever is interested in going, 6 o'clock kickoff Friday evening, Energy Park in Donnybrook. All funds going towards Irish and English rugby charities as well. Always a decent game, always a good bit of fun. But guys, seriously, the big games of the week. Looking back at Murrayfield on Sunday, Ireland 22-7 winners against Scotland, and looking ahead to England this Saturday evening, 5 o'clock kickoff at the Aviva Stadium. Ireland going for a grand slam. And Sean, before we talk about the games specifically, the experience and the buzz of the final week of a Six Nations when you're going for a title. You've been in this situation before 2018 when Ireland won in Twickenham. Even aside from the games themselves, but the buzz of the week. We were out in Abbottstown yesterday, and Tyg Furlong was up for media, and he was asked about it, and he kind of said that obviously once the game kicks off, it's going to be fully focused on the match itself, and you're not thinking about Grand Slams or titles. But he said if during this week you're not excited about playing this weekend because of what's at stake, then what's the point of doing it all? When you were playing, did you allow yourself to kind of factor in the size of the game during the week, or were you very much focused on just 80 minutes, it's another game? Because I know it kind of varies for player to player.
Look, I think it's hard. And look, Tig's comments, that's a great mindset to have. And I think he said you play the game and not the occasion. But, it's very, very hard to try and block all that out. I suppose the magnitude of what's at stake, I suppose in 2018, we were going to Twickenham to try and get the job done for the Grand Slam, whereas this is at home, the first time ever, which adds another layer of, I suppose, pressure really in terms of what's at stake for the squad this weekend, playing at home, playing for a Grand Slam. Johnny's Sexton's potential last ever Six Nations game. So there's a lot more layered on this game this weekend. So it's very hard to block that out. But again, it adds to, I suppose, the excitement of the week, getting prepared as a squad, and I suppose looking forward to what is at stake if you can get the job done, which is ultimately why, you play the game, and when you're growing up as a young guy playing and for moments like this. So Look, it's so exciting to be, I'd say, to be involved in that squad this week, and the opportunity to get that done at home in the Aviva in front of your home crowd is something that will spur the lads on.
And would it have factored into the preparation of the week, team meetings, things like that, talking about the potential prize that was on offer, or were you very much kind of coldly focused on we're playing England this Saturday, excuse me, in a big Six Nations game, and it's about the X's and O's of the match itself?
Yeah. Look, in terms of the squad and their preparation, they'll be, I suppose, trying to keep the focus like it's every other week and try and keep the players calm and get the level of detail needed. And I suppose from a coaching point of view, trying to block out all that noise. But again, it seems like, the coaching staff, Andy, they don't fear living with that pressure, living with that expectation. So it'll be, I suppose, look, business as usual in terms of preparation and like you said, getting the X's and O's, the detail around set piece and phase play and so on. But they seem to be, as a coaching team, building these guys up to thrive under the pressure and thrive under the expectation and enjoying it at the same time. So no, look, it'll be business as usual in terms of detail and getting the players ready. But it seems like a new mindset for this group of players.
And Mick, obviously, the main difference to this time around as well is that it's at home. The last 4 Six Nations titles Ireland have won have all been away from home. 1980-85 was the last one they actually managed to win in Ireland. And also, as Sean said as well, it's going to be Johnny Sexton's last competitive game at the Aviva Stadium, and more than likely going to become the Six Nations all-time record point scorer on the day as well. Tig Furlong said it as well. It's all carrot, no stick this weekend, but there's a lot of motivation and there's a lot of pressure at the same time.
Absolutely, as Sean mentioned, there's so many different subplots involved in the game this weekend, and again, Sean will be in a better position to talk about this than me. But I'd imagine there's a bigger fear of losing this week as opposed to actually winning the Grand Slam. I know that sounds a little bit cliched, but like, it's such a massive occasion that I think in guys' minds, almost the fear of not delivering and not putting in the performance that they'd like is, I wouldn't say crippling, but I'd say it's definitely on a couple of guys' minds going into this.
Yeah, and famously enough, Ireland have kind of thrived off other teams' fear of failure in the last game of a Six Nations. Like 2017, England came to the Aviva already having won the title, and Ireland absolutely do them on the day. Sean, I know you weren't playing that one, but it was Ireland have done this to teams down the years where they've killed the Grand Slam dreams on the final game of the Six Nations.
Yeah, well, this is it. I suppose, again, there's a sense of pride and a sense of, teams coming to, from an Irish point of view, coming to their home stadium to clinch a Grand Slam it's a massive motivator for any Irish team. So, and especially when England come into town, Mac Hansen had some interesting comments during the week. I think that was more from an Australian point of view. They don't like each other either. So, no, look, I think as Mick said, and I probably undercooked it in terms of the level of pressure that this game will have in terms of all the subplots that are linked to it, with Johnny's last Six Nations game, the point scoring, the Grand Slam on the line, the first at home. I think in 85, that was obviously Triple Crown, wasn't it? Triple Crown in 85. So, huge amounts of pressure in this game. And like I said, it's just about, and look, that was really refreshing to hear Tig's comments in terms of, playing the game and not the occasion and so on. But, from a player's point of view, it's very hard to keep that noise out for a full week in preparation for the game.
Mm-hmm. Let's roll back now to the Scotland game on Sunday. There was a round of media calls yesterday with Brian O'Driscoll, and I said it to him, the question I asked, and I'll ask it to you as well. I was saying, 5-6 minutes into the second half in Murrayfield, Ireland have already lost. They've already lost Dan Sheehan. Ronan Kelleher looks like he's on his last legs. He's not going to last much longer. Josh van der Fleer is already thrown into a couple of lineouts. Cian Healy's warming up, getting ready to come on at hooker, and Ireland are a point ahead after what was a really, really close first 40 minutes. Mick, I'll put it to you first. What were your confidence levels like that Ireland could see out the game? Because Brian O'Driscoll yesterday said he was still pretty confident that Ireland were going to win by around 12 points. And I remember on Sunday afternoon, I was nowhere near as confident as that.
Yeah, my confidence levels outside the set piece were very high. You know, seeing Ireland's ball retention throughout the game, you know, seeing how accurate they were in terms of passing, breakdown, and obviously defensively they were very strong as well. But you know, I'd imagine the Scotland forwards are absolutely kicking themselves in terms of, like, Josh is thrown into the lineouts and he did an incredible job, but they're almost trying to run like a mirror defense against Ireland instead of, like, I think it might have been the last line out of the game, Scott Cummins, there was eventually a late shift into like a kind of a 3-5 shape. So his pod was just in front of that middle pod of Ireland. And then the other pod was just behind it to cut off Peter O'Mahony or whatever. So Josh is suddenly trying to throw over Scott Cummins and kind of drop it in, like, right onto James Ryan if he takes that ball in the middle. And then also, obviously, Johnny Gray is standing right beside Pete. So if it does go there, it's going to be, he's more than likely going to pick it off. So yeah, I probably felt from a Scottish point of view, their tactics around line-out defence were pretty poor, and they definitely played into Josh's hands from a throwing point of view, which I'd imagine he'll be very grateful for. And then obviously credit to James Ryan from a calling point of view as well, because he called incredibly well to spot the way that Scotland were trying to do things.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm interested to get your take both on Josh throwing and Cian Healy going in at scrummaging. We'll stay on Josh and the throws because that's where we landed for now. But so much has to actually happen for those lineouts to be a success. And Mick kind of hinted at it there as well, where first of all, Josh van der Fleer just needs to have the peace of mind to make the right throw and do it properly, which he does. Then you have the likes of Peter O'Mahony, James Ryan have to find the sympathetic calls to get him the best possible option where he doesn't have to do something too elaborate. And then also as well, you have to have Scotland just not really being aware to the situation and not putting Ireland under constant pressure, whether it's constantly pinging the ball out of play to just force line out after line out, but also then as well, as Mick said, not just having Scott Cummings right up at the front and just putting Ireland under huge pressure and forcing Van der Fleer to either find a bullet into Peter O'Mahony at the front or going further back towards James Ryan to make a riskier throw.
Yeah, look, there's so much there to pick through in terms of what you and Mick have outlined. I suppose I'll start with Josh first, in terms of he's always been, I suppose, in terms of when we were training with Leinster, he was always an option in terms of throwing, because if we had a hooker in the sin bin, so Josh would always, especially on captain's run day, you know, Mick, you probably remember, he was always taking a few reps in terms of if that situation arise. So that kind of preparation has been going on for, you know, a number of years now. So I mean, you know, all the hookers would be getting wound up about how well he was throwing, and everyone would be like, "Hey, you know, would we just throw Josh in and get you out?" Like, you know, this kind of stuff. So yeah, but in terms of the whole, I couldn't understand how Mick is outlined in terms of the way Scotland deed up with the line out. I couldn't understand their game management, especially 5, 6, 7 minutes into that second half. You know, they had a scrum on their own 10 where they tried to run it wide. They actually got turned over. Instead of trying to put Ireland back into the corners, make them even just try and get it off the pitch in terms of then going after the line out, putting them under pressure in their own half. It was just poor game management from Scotland in a few areas in terms of their line out defence, in terms of their game management, which, you know, like Mick said, they must be looking back as a unit and just going, what were we doing, you know, in terms of trying to squeeze Ireland a bit. But and then from then on, Ireland just won all the big moments. They had that lovely box kick by Gibson Park where Mac Hansen won it in the air, offloads to Johnny. They end up scoring. They took their chances really well and were just clinical, made less mistakes, more clinical, more ruthless when they had their opportunities. And that's what got them over the line against unbelievable adversity with players gone, Cian Healy at hooker and so on. So it was just ruthless clinical stuff from Ireland, and Scotland just didn't have that on the day.
And then the other element, Sean, is Cian Healy going in at hooker. And I know it was kind of, spoken of that he was a hooker in school with Belvedere College. But when we asked him yesterday, when was the last time he actually in training took a rep as a hooker, he said it was probably in 2008, which is just remarkable altogether. You might talk us through, Sean, the kind of technicalities and differences of what he is actually trying to do as a loose head prop and what he is trying to do as a hooker in the scrum, because that's the stuff that when we're watching it on TV, we can't really see, obviously. And just also as well to contextualize how difficult it was to swap between one and the other at a moment's notice. Now, bear in mind as well, when he was asked about it, Cian simply said his logic was you just have to hit and push and strike. So maybe that's what he was going for on Sunday. But you might talk us through the more nuanced view of it.
I suppose, well, a little kind of story. I scrummed against Cian Healy for Shannon against Clontarf, and he was playing at hooker at senior level. So, and I remember thinking, and then I heard he moved into loose head prop afterwards, and I was kind of like, I'm pretty happy to hear that, because he was so strong, and he was a couple of years younger than me at the time, and so. But in terms of for the game, did Ireland have a scrum on their own ball when Cian was in at hooker, or was it all opposition ball? I can't remember exactly who had to put in on those. Because there's obviously there's a big difference in terms of opposition ball where, he still had to get his setup right, and he had to make sure his connections with his loose head and tight head correct, and making sure he's not sitting back onto his second rows. He's finding them with his arse, so to speak. He's not sitting back, and he nailed all that detail. You got to make sure that you're pushing at the correct angle, whatever the scrum call is. So he nailed off so many little blocks of detail there, and then you just factor in the strength that the guy has. So he did unbelievably well, and I suppose the only little tick against him was missing that quick tap on the 5 meter line, where I was literally on the floor laughing, because you think it looks like such an easy skill, but when you got 5-6 guys across you in a 3-point start ready to take to take you down, it's it's something that you just forget so easily. And I saw him have a little smile afterwards as well to himself, so you knew. But he did unbelievably well, to slot in there, and Josh the same throne. So it was an unbelievable day for the two of them.
That's just on the quick tap penalty, Mick. That's one element of professional rugby where anytime I see it, I just automatically think there is no place I would less rather be than being the front man on a 5 meter tap and go, because you are running just straight at a defense that are charging out from the try line. And likewise, you have a handful of your own players just ready to smash in behind you as well. It's like being stuck in the middle of an accordion where you are completely sandwiched and just completely exposed. It just looks like a horrible place to be. I'm not surprised that, he accidentally just never tapped the ball, because you've so much on your mind.
Well, Mick would have always standing out for the second phase. He doesn't know much about that, but...
Big time. I'd be praying it's not a pass play. Carry it there, Sean. You'll be fine.
But just to go back on the scrums and the lineouts as well in the second half, it does say so much, Mick, for the way Ireland have been able to adapt to situations and adapt to difficulties, that the James Lowe try, Ireland's second of the game, that put them into that 8-point buffer and made them a little bit more comfortable in the match. If you strip it all back from part to part, first of all, you've James Lowe scoring the try, then it comes back to Mac Hansen taking the up and under. That up and under was off the back of clean line-out ball that Josh van der Flier threw, and that line-out came off the back of a scrum penalty that Cian Healy was instrumental in winning. And it just, I think, sums up the way this Irish team over the course of the Six Nations have been able to react to those moments of adversity and those difficult moments that are being thrown at them.
Definitely. I think nothing seems to have flustered them throughout this Six Nations. Obviously, the Scotland game being a classic example, but like there was other elements of the game that had to change as a result of Josh going into throw. If Josh is throwing lineouts, that then means that Cian has to be +1 on lineouts. So in terms of breakout plays, there's a chance there could be a second delay in terms of, you know, if Cian is +1, he's breaking out and he's passing to 12. It's probably not something that they practice during the week. So there's always going to be that little bit of hesitation, either consciously or subconsciously. But to see them just get into their work and, you know, make the best of the situation was, you know, obviously very promising for the tournament ahead. And then obviously very pleasing from a fan and from an Irish point of view.
And Sean, like, that just isn't something that's happened on Sunday. It's been a theme throughout the championship so far, where you had the eve of the Wales game, you had a couple of late injuries and a couple of injury setbacks. And it was all that soft tissue stuff in the first couple of weeks as well. Dan Sheehan the following week ahead of the game against France. Even just Conor Murray's own personal situation with the accident his father had in the week of the game, and how nobody was disrupted by that and everyone reacted so well to it. And then the extent of the injuries they had during the game against France, where Johnny Sexton goes off at the game in the balance, Tyke Furlong does his ankle, and all those subs that came on probably added to the performance rather than just kept it on track. Then in the game against Scotland at the weekend, you have the situation we obviously spoke about there, where Cian Healy and Josh van der Flier are stepping in to do things they've little experience doing. But also you have Jack Conan coming on for Caelan Doris early on and playing an absolute blinder, having not really had his best game against Italy a couple of weeks back. Ryan Baird comes in as well, does well. You, generally speaking, across all the games so far, the bench players have pretty much added to the Irish performance week on week.
Yeah, and look, it's not, like you said, it's not that you just look back at the Scottish game. It's been running throughout the tournament, where they faced, I suppose, you know, levels of adversity throughout each and every game. You know, Finlay Bealham coming in for Tig and doing unbelievably well. You know, Peter Mahoney at the weekend going 80 minutes was outstanding. Jack Conan coming on, like you said, you saw, remember that tackle where, you know, Pete puts, I can't remember the Scottish player out,
Kinghorn,
helping him, and you saw what it meant to them. Small moment in the game, but that seems to be what's running through the squad at the moment. No matter who is stepping in, they're ready to go. Their performance levels are right up there. Conor Murray, like you said, the situation he was dealing with has played really well this tournament. So there's countless stories like that where the squad has come together at key times, and no matter who it is, they've stepped in, did a job, and that seems to have built such a good squad mentality that it's really led to the success that they're having at the moment.
And Mick, do you think they look far better equipped to deal with those little mini setbacks that could happen even before or during a match than they have in previous seasons?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, like they obviously haven't. Well, we haven't seen them experience anything, I suppose, of the magnitude of last week. It's hard to say. Like I can't think off the top of my head whether there's been a case of, you know, someone pulling out the night before a game and the replacement coming in and not playing well. In previous seasons, I think when that happens, the majority of the time, the guy that slots in does his job really, really well. But like this Six Nations, this campaign, they've been unbelievable when it comes to guys getting their opportunity. And I think as well as that, like, everyone wants to be a part of a winning team. So if you are on the bench or you are kind of drafted in late, you know, there's that bit of added pressure that if you come in and you don't perform, you'll miss the bus. Like things will keep will keep moving forward, and you might not be involved in that as a result of putting in a performance that you're not overly pleased with.
Sean, the closest game recently that I could think where there was that level of kind of chaos was probably the first test in New Zealand, where there was COVID stuff going on in the days beforehand. Johnny Sexton goes off injured during the first half when Ireland were in a solid position, and the wheels completely fell off. And it probably does feel like that was a bit of a turning point for the team about, dealing with situations as they crop up during matches and not allowing the slap in the face to ultimately ruin your day.
Yeah, look, and I think it's been, I'd said earlier, it's been driven by the coaching staff. Andy Farrell, has been a big team that he's come out with constantly in some, press conferences, and is to be able to deal with, I suppose he's talked about dealing with pressure of whatever situation in the game, dealing with pressures outside of the game, leading up to a game, and just being, I think he said, with the bus situation being late, like we get changed in the bus and we get out and we're ready to go. So that's what he's trying to prepare his squad for, which is fantastic. And it's really come to the fore now in this Six Nations, where they've encountered, a lot of challenges along the way, whether it's been around selections, injuries, and maybe that's a big learning curve that they took from the beginning of that New Zealand series, was that how to deal with different levels of adversity, different levels of injuries, players being in and out. And, the proof's in the pudding now with how the Six Nations has went. And it's been a massive area as well that they've built their squad. Tighthead was obviously a big concern. You have Finlay, Tom O'Toole is going well. The back row, Conor Murray's back on form. It's been a real, I suppose, massive area for growth for this squad leading into this tournament and throughout the tournament, and building then towards the World Cup as well.
Yeah, and Andy Farrell has spoken so much about, as you said, enjoying those setbacks and challenges. I am a little bit worried though that, like, the morning of the game against South Africa in the World Cup, he'll be deliberately giving the bus driver wrong directions just to see how the lads go. He seems like he's almost playing with fire a little bit too much here and tempting the gods with the amount of setbacks Ireland are getting in these games. I kind of just want a quiet week for once,
I know, but I'd say you love it in the media, you love this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'd say the players wouldn't mind a quiet week now, to be honest. This week, a nice quiet week where, something out of the ordinary doesn't happen. Just let us be a nice week this week, no disruption.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll flick it on to England this Saturday, 5:00 at the Aviva Stadium, live on RTÉ Radio 1. Mick, we kind of alluded to it at the start. So, look, England beaten 53-10 by France at the weekend, their heaviest ever Twickenham defeat. But as we did mention, Ireland have shown in the past that stopping someone else's Grand Slam is pretty big motivation.
100%. Like, England have, they've so many different motivations this week. Obviously, as you mentioned, they were hockeyed by France last weekend, which brought a huge amount of delight to many nations, I can imagine. And coming to Ireland, they control their inhibitions to the wind. They've nothing to lose. I don't know if Steve Borthwick's game plan, from what I've seen so far, really lends itself to that style of play. We'll find out. We'll find out obviously on Saturday. But like, it's going to be a really tough task for them, in my opinion. Like, they've lost Ollie Lawrence early in the week. They've lost Chem today. I've seen Manu Tuilagi will obviously come back in. Like, in terms of building cohesion, I don't think they've really done anything in this Six Nations on that front. Marcus Smith's been in for one or two at 10. Owen Farrell's been in at 10. Owen Farrell started one at 12. Like, I think, from the point of view of building something going into the World Cup, I don't know where they're going to get the opportunities outside of training to build that bit of cohesion as a group. So whether they use this game on Saturday as an opportunity to do that remains to be seen. I suppose we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, and Sean, that's the big question. How much of a difference can the the sleeves rolled up mentality have, and how much an improvement can you make off the back of that, and will it be enough? Because if you were to judge England off their game against France, they looked largely out of ideas when they had the ball. They looked pretty unfit, I think, at times as well, in comparison to the French players, and just weren't really able to adapt and react to moments in the game. To when France would make a particular line break, when there was space in certain areas of the field, they just looked all over the place in pretty much every aspect.
Yeah, look, and I think when you look back at some of Steve Borthwick's comments throughout the tournament, where he says they're not good at anything, look, I would have an element of fear. They're playing for pride this week. They're wounded. They'll get a couple of players back who historically have caused us issues with Tuilagi, and so it's going to be there. I don't know what kind of England are going to show up. I have no idea what kind of team they're going to pick. Do they go back to Farrell at 10 and Tuilagi at 12, Slade 13? Their pack is the big issue. They got destroyed against France up front. Back row are dominated. Traditionally as well, the English maul has been poor. They've been poor in a lot of their backfield cover has been poor. Their defensive read. So it's hard to know, can you clear all of that up in 1 week and try and put a performance together? But you still, like you said, there is that motivational factor of being spanked by 40 points the week before, trying to stop Ireland winning a Grand Slam. I think they'll come over and put in a performance, but I still think Ireland will be too good, and could be 10+ point win for us.
To put you, obviously, you're coaching now at the moment, Sean. To put you in Borthwick's shoes, you listed out like a fairly long list of issues they were having in the pack and stuff like that against France. But if you're addressing that this week, do you pick out one or two of those areas and make sure you have them absolutely nailed come Saturday, or do you try put in quick little fixes into everything and try tightening everything up? Do you have to kind of prioritize a couple of key issues and just nail those down? Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think they need to. I don't think they will, but I think I would go back with Farrell at 10, Tuilagi at 12, Slade at 13. I'd look to get my kicking game nailed on in terms of applying pressure to Ireland. I defensively then, filling the field correctly, getting your backfield right, just finding ways to maybe counteract how good Ireland are in terms of attack, and trying to put pressure on them in terms of their kicking game, squeezing them a small, but can they maul them? Ireland are good at defending them all. You saw it in the autumn internationals against South Africa. So it's going to be difficult for them. But look, up front, they got to get their set piece nailed, scrum, line out, maul, kicking game accurate, and defensively, they got to be sound in the first 20, 30 minutes to be in the game.
Mick, there's a few selection calls that have to be made this week, as there have been pretty much every week. The injuries have been piling up. There's a few definites and a few doubts. So the definites, obviously, there's a space in the centre after Gary Ringrose got that awful head injury, and he's definitely ruled out of the game. Robbie Henshaw came off the bench, really threw himself about, 6 tackles in 14 minutes. Stuart McCluskey has done really well over the last 2 campaigns as well. Jimmy O'Brien has filled in when necessary. Who do you think is, well, I'm assuming Bundyaki's keeping his place at 12, but who do you think is coming in alongside him at 13?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty simple from an Irish point of view in that sense. Robbie will be pushed out to 13, and Bundy will stay at 12 with McCluskey more than likely coming onto the bench. I think the really interesting thing around selection is whether Ross Maloney comes on the bench. Obviously Treadwell's been in camp for the last couple of weeks, but aside from the Maori game during the summer, Treadwell hasn't really called a huge amount. Baird hasn't called a huge amount for Leinster either. So whether they say, okay, we want Baird to just go out there and try and be an athletic freak, not to have calling on his mind whatsoever, leave that up to James Ryan. And then late in the game, or if those guys are wilting at any stage, we can bring Ross on to look after the line-out calling side of things, because he's, as Sean will tell you, he's unbelievably assured in that area, and he gives a lot of confidence to the people around him. they both bring different things in terms of Treadwell and Maloney. Obviously, Treadwell is maybe a little bit more dynamic around the park.
You're saying Maloney as a line-out caller is brilliant, is it?
Yeah, he's very good line-out caller. Yeah, very, very good around that area. So it's whether they want to put him on the bench to look after that side of things, or whether they're happy enough to stick with Treadwell if James Ryan does go down early and second row has to come on off the bench. That second row coming on is more than likely going to be the calling second row. So there will definitely be a decision to be made there.
Sean, what would your gut be telling you about second row, both starting this week alongside James Ryan, and then obviously taking the vacant spot on the bench?
I presume, yeah. I suppose reading into it, you're probably looking at James Ryan and Ryan Baird starting as a combination. The bench spot, I suppose Treadwell, anytime he's been involved, he's done pretty well. He's done very well at times. So it'll be a tough one. It's got to come down to, like Mick has pointed out, the mix in terms of what they're looking for. Do they need like Ross is unbelievably good at calling the line out, reading defenses, around the pitch as well, very good. So it'll probably come down to the combination they're looking for in terms of maybe they might go with both of them on the bench. I don't know. Could they go with 6-2? It's hard to know in terms of a split what they'll do, but I'd say you'll be looking at Ryan Baird and James Ryan starting the game anyway, and then it's hard to know what they'll do on the bench.
At hooker, it seems pretty simple. Dan Sheehan and Ronan Keller, they're not ruled out of this weekend yet, but if both of them are, you're looking at Rob Herring and Tom Stewart. If one of them's out, you're probably looking at Rob Herring coming in, and so on and so forth. But if Caelan Doris is out, for example, there's a really interesting call, and there are lots of interesting options that Andy Farrell can choose from with what he wants to do with the back row. Mick, if Caelan Doris was out, what would you be looking at doing with the starting back row, and then who would you have in that 20 shirt on the bench?
Yes, I think Jack Conlon comes straight in. Obviously, he'll come in to start because he had such a massive impact on the game the last day. In terms of the 20 jersey, I'd probably, in my mind, I'd be inclined to give someone like Scott Penny a crack. I know it's pretty controversial with the way that Gavin Coombs has been playing in Munster and stuff like that, and I don't want to come across as being biased, but I think in a game like this, like Penny's such a groundhog, and if England do have any kind of momentum where they're getting front foot ball, he's a good man to come in and get a turnover and kind of stymie attack. So in my mind, I'd like to see someone like Scott Penny get a crack there, but at the same time, if Gavin Coombs, who's on brilliant form at Munster at the moment, came in, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Sean, he's just covering himself there by mentioning Gavin Coombs at the end. The hot takes are outrageous. But like that is a very interesting call. In my head, I was kind of automatically thinking, is it Gavin Coombs or Nick Timoney, just because of it seemed like that was the natural pecking order. But what would you be thinking? It probably does seem like if Doris is out, it's going to be Jack Conan in the starting team. But there are, just to kind of sum it up, like there are great options available for depending on what type of a game Andy Farrell wants to play with, what he wants to do with the bench.
Yeah, look, no, there is, and I think I suppose just touching on the hooker situation first, was it cleared what exactly Dan Sheehan went off with? They
were both shoulders apparently.
Oh, okay.
Both shoulder injuries, according to the update.
So look, if it would be a huge loss to lose both of them. And Tom Stewart coming on to the bench for potentially his first cap in a Grand Slam decider. Be rest assured he probably wouldn't get much sleep the night before that game. But he's played really, really well for Ulster this year. But again, the magnitude of the game. I suppose touching on the back row. Look, I've been on the show before, and I was raving about how well Gavin Coombs has been playing, especially since the November break post that. So I think that he would probably come in, and you're looking at a back row of Jack Conan, Josh, and Peter Mahoney with Gavin Coombs on the bench. For me, I get where Mick is coming from in terms of, again, look, it's like the second row selection. It comes down to what the coaches are looking for, what type of area of impact that they're looking for. Are they looking for someone maybe to stifle some ball, line speed off in terms of defence, or are they looking for a ball carrier to come on like Gavin Coombs, who can, punch holes? Is very good in the ground himself. So, or Nick Timoney as well. So look, there's an array of options there, which is fantastic situation for the coaching staff to be in.
And then just to wrap everything up in a bow before we finish up, we finished this game on Saturday, and all of a sudden we're talking about the World Cup, and we've spent so long, Mick, over the last while saying, okay, we're doing this campaign, and the World Cup is in the long vision. We're kind of looking at the short term and constantly building. But all of a sudden, once the full-time whistle goes, whether or not Ireland are lifting a trophy on Saturday evening, it's World Cup time. We're there pretty much, and that is the next block that we're all looking ahead to. It's an incredibly exciting few months ahead.
Definitely, I think it's an exciting time for Irish rugby in general. Like, there's a good chance Leinster are going to have some really exciting days coming up to the tail end of the season, as we've spoken about previously. Hopefully they can do the business in Europe. Like, they have home games the whole way up to the final, and then the final is obviously in Dublin as well. The URC final would be a great opportunity. We don't know who's going to be in there but there's definitely going to be an Irish province in the mix in some regard, I'd imagine. And yeah, then as you mentioned, the lads who were selected will be rolling into a Rugby World Cup camp, which I heard are great fun. Sean, if you have to give a bit more detail on that. And then there's the big dance. Yeah. So it's going to be a really, really exciting summer, and very exciting for all involved, I'd imagine, from a players and supporters of Irish rugby standpoint. And
Sean, on one side reassuring, but the other is it's a really tricky call to make, is that if you look at the 37 to 40 odd players who've been involved training with Ireland over the course of these last 7 weeks for the Six Nations, there are 6 or 7 of those players who aren't going to make the cut in a World Cup squad, and that just reinforces the depth that Ireland have and the amount that they've been able to get out of this squad over the last 6-7 weeks as well. Like, there are a lot of some very, very talented players in that training group who aren't even going to make it to France.
Yeah, and when you look at some of the names there, I suppose compared to 4 years ago, there's a seriously amount of talented guys that will miss out, which is, again, shows the level of depth that's been built in Irish rugby even in that 4-year period. Like I saw an article recently. Yeah, some of the names down there that might lose out are guys with a fair amount of caps, fair amount of experience at club level. But look, I know you're excited, Neil, about the World Cup, but there's a serious amount of rugby to be played between now and then. Myself and Mick's World Cup will be post Six Nations. We're trying to get into the playoffs of the AIL. But yeah, no, look, all jokes aside, there's, like Mick had said, with the URC Champions Cup, injuries will play a part, but it's an exciting time for Irish rugby, exciting time for these players to put their hands up with all these games that are going to come, and we'll see how it plays out in the coming months.
Very good. Final call, lads. Who's gonna win on Saturday?
Mick, you go first there. You get the head in the chopping block.
I think Ireland are going to win by 20.
Oh, 20.
Yeah, Ireland by 20.
You've got an easy job now, Sean. You can say something like 15, and it's going to seem like the conservative bet.
Won't sound as outrageous as Mick.
I'm talking about Ireland legends. Talking about the legends. Sean Cronin on a hard track, definitely 20 points.
Is there a spread on that? Is any spread up on that? For the game on Saturday, the big one, I think 9, 10, 11 point win for Ireland. I can't see, like I said, England getting all those areas that need to be touched up sorted. I think there's too much on the line for our lads, and I think it will be too much for them.
All right. Well, look, fingers crossed you're right in the result anyway.
We'll
we'll take a 1 point win if it means Ireland are the Grand Slam champions. Sean, thanks a million, and best of luck on Friday evening in the Legends game. As I said, that's at 6 o'clock at Energia Park in Donnybrook. Best of luck, and best of luck as well for the rest of the season in the All Ireland League with Clontarf and Marys as well.